Captain's Log Supplemental. My officers are conspiring against me, or they might be replicants. Or Borg with really convincing makeup? Listen, I don't know. I don't think I have much time left in charge of the ship. Dr. Carr said I was acting more paranoid than a Kelpian ever since we got back from Tychon's Rift. I feel like I haven't slept in days, but I know that if I do sleep, one of my haha officers will stick me to death with a bat'leth. Just need to find more of these stims I liberated from sickbay.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Captain's Log Supplemental. My name is Stanford. This is a Star Trek rewatch podcast, and two of the people that are rewatching it with me are Chris.
Hello there.
And Rob.
Hello.
And then our producer, who resolutely refuses to rewatch it with us, is Mariah.
I'm not watching any of it.
Is it rewatching if she never watched it in the first place?
She has not watched Enterprise, that's true.
I'll rewatch TNG when y'all get there.
All right.
You gonna rewatch the speeches with us?
Oh.
Yes, that is the correct noise.
As I said, we are a rewatch podcast. We are rewatching all of Star Trek in chronological canon order, starting with the earliest crap, which is Enterprise. We're still new at this in terms of numbers, although we have been doing this for over a year now. But we would very much appreciate anyone of our listeners just throwing out some 5-star reviews, because we're 5-star people. Giving us some likes. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that's been going pretty well. We got over 60 subscribers on there in the course of like a week and a half. So
That's crazy.
It's not nothing. So yeah, things are getting better, but it could always, get the word out there. Tell your friends, come listen to us bitch about this 20-year-old show.
Yeah. So, non sequitur first. I've been on TikTok, and I never know whether the thing I'm seeing so much of is just my very specific algorithm, or if it's really all over TikTok. Have you had this thing happen to you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There are even TikToks that are about that.
Okay. Because all over it for the last week has been this, I put a little dirt on my pillow for the dirt man.
Yeah, that thing that all guys do.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm is it just my weird specific algorithm, or is it everywhere?
No.
Oh my god,
No.
I cannot get that out of my head.
At any moment, the dirt man might come to town, and if he catches you without some dirt under your pillow.
Yeah, well, they'll take you down.
Right.
Into his lair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started getting those earlier this week too, Chris. Don't feel bad.
All right. Because I almost posted it several times to you guys in the group. I'm like, is this too weird? Is this just my weird thing?
I can confirm it has not made it to Instagram yet.
That one may not. There are ones that don't really make it to Instagram, especially the ones that are too weird. Like that one might not. I doubt raise your hand.
Yeah.
I doubt that one's going to make it to Instagram either. My throat has been raw doing that for several days.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the person who's doing it originally is dying as they speak.
Mm-hmm. If you want.
Speaking of famous TikTokers dying,
Jesus.
Kelsey's favorite TikTok meme of recent days just passed away. It's the cat that goes, I go meow.
Yeah.
I go meow.
Kara? Is that
Apparently
the
that cat
name?
passed away.
Yes.
Aww.
Yeah. That's very sad.
Well, thanks for bringing that fucking down. Jesus, Rob.
Oh, you're
I
welcome.
just had a fun Dirtman story. Jeez.
The case he comes to town.
Literally, I was watching TV trying to go to sleep last night. And every time I got up, I just sing it in my head as I was walking to the fridge or go to the bathroom. It would be in my head.
Amazing.
Yep.
I feel like actually, so you asked me earlier if I had any banter because you were going to talk about Dirt Man. I said no, but now I'm thinking I feel like I did have something I wanted to talk about.
Do you know
That's
how
a cool story.
often you say that?
Every week.
The problem is that my brain is always dude, you've forgotten so much shit. You must have something in there.
Well, then you don't have to tell us that you think you've
No,
a banter, but you
that's
forgot.
it's
Just
called
say
a
it when you
segue.
have it.
No, it's called a segue.
Oh, you are gonna, because usually you don't have anything.
That's neither here nor there.
It's definitely not here.
And this conversation has made me lose any grasp of it in my brain.
I got a new car.
Yeah? What kind of car?
It's electric. It's a Chevy Bolt EUV, which Stanford's very disgusted because it's an electronic utility vehicle, like SUV.
I didn't say disgusted. It was just weird. It's a weird use of UV at the end there.
You carried it in your voice.
You used your that stupid voice, huh?
Oh, fuck, that's what it was. So we're at dinner with my family, my in-laws on Monday, and my father-in-law's complaining about some bullshit on the internet. He's like, I wanted to get to such and such, but every time I went there, it was an ad. It was just some kind of click and bait site. And,
that's a different kind of site, Grandpa.
and I'm like, click and bait. Oh, that's funny too. It's like a park and ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty sure that's synonymous, frankly.
Oh my god, I thought that's the joke you were making earlier when you told me this.
No. The joke
No,
was
you
that
thought
it's
that
called
funny.
clickbait, not click and bait. The joke is that he's an ancient man. But like, so I'm in my head like, nah, click and bait. That's funny because it's supposed to be clickbait, but he's old. That's all right, I'm not going to say anything. But I look over and Liam is sitting next to him and he's looking at me like, did you just hear this shit this old fucking motherfucker said? And I'm like, no, dude, don't say anything. He's like, all right, I got it. I just want to make sure that you heard that fucking nonsense that Grandpa just said. So Liam is apparently getting to that age where not only is he recognizing that old people don't know how to say shit right, but also like that like eye contact exchange that you do when you don't want that
The
person to
shared
hear you
mental
making
joke.
fun of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a fun milestone I saw in my kid's development today or on Monday.
That is a fun milestone.
Although now he's also taken to telling me what words I'm not allowed to use because I'm a millennial.
Oh my god,
What?
he thinks that every single fucking slang word that's ever existed came from Gen Z.
So
He's-
Chris, I've recently started playing Halo with our nephew. Right?
Oh, God.
And the one day he asked me if I knew what OP meant.
Oh, my God.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Don't quote to me the ancient scriptures,
It's
boy.
exactly what, because he's always like, you can't say yeet. That's what Gen Z came up with that. I'm like, no, they didn't.
The hell they did.
He's like, you can't say cringe. I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And then there was one he said, I'm like, dude, they came up with that in the 50s. What the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good times. So, all right. Now, not all the mandatory small talk time is out of the way. Let's get to this episode. So, this week, just to change things up, I decided to go ahead and watch a Western instead of Star Trek.
I saw this, and I realized that you had the summary. I'm like, oh, boy.
Yeah. This is like as close to a holodeck episode as this show gets, and it's a holodeck episode.
Well, I'm pretty sure almost every Star Trek series has like a Western, except like the old Trek anyway.
Yeah. No,
Well-
they just had Chicago mobsters.
It's funny you mentioned that because, like, old Trek and Western is part of what I'm going to talk about in the deep dive today.
Okay.
So, yes. So, when I saw the thumbnail, it was like Archer in a cowboy hat. I was like, ah, shit, here we go. So, I have not made it a secret that I am not generally a fan of holodeck episodes, and I classify holodeck episodes as like episodes where they're not really being themselves, they're just like playing other characters and fucking around and not actually doing any Star Trek-y stuff. So,
Don't you also just like generally hate westerns?
So, and that was my second point. My second point is that I'm not a fan of Westerns. And I've realized after watching this episode, I can finally put into words why. And the answer is because it's the same fucking story every time. Like, there's no...
Oh yeah.
The tropes in a Western are so strong that they have to tell the same story every time. And I've already seen that story 1,000 times, so I'm good.
Yeah, like classically, westerns were like romance novels for dudes. Like it's just the same story over and over again, told with different people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Outsider comes to town. Lawman can't quite get his shit together for whatever reason. Outsider makes it happen. Then he leaves. This is every Western.
Hey,
there you go.
You forgot the mandatory Main Street shootout.
And a shaving scene.
Yeah.
Oh, and somebody got to cheat at cards.
Nobody cheated cards in this one.
That's true.
No. Very disappointing.
No, yeah, there's some wiggle room. There's some noting that they can do inside the saloon and stuff. There's always got to be a saloon scene, but there's some variance as to what can be inside the saloon. Like a procedure. That's the thing. Westerns are too procedurally generated for my tastes. So, all right. So, cold open. My first note is, we're doing a Western, and there goes that mouth harp, because like, it can't just be a Western. It's got to be a Western, like through and through. So we get Westerny music. Apparently this planet that they're on, spoiler, it's not actually Earth. It's like another planet. And the atmosphere is such that everything looks like a Western. So it's like a sepia atmosphere.
Yeah, it's like Hollywood is making a movie about Mexico.
Yes. Everything's just kind of yellow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we open with a good old-fashioned Western lynching, although instead of a black person or a Native American or a Mexican, it is an alien.
Skag.
There are no people of color in this episode. I don't know if either of you noticed that. I don't think even Travis
not on the
showed up.
planet. One of the Marines was black.
Oh, yes. Okay, I forgot about that one Marine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even Travis wasn't in this episode.
Nope.
No, so basically like a classic Western, everyone here is white, probably Italian. However, I will say to this episode's credit, this was the most appropriate transition to the credits song that this show could probably manage.
Most appropriate? You mean dead guys, their feet hanging there to jangly intro?
Yeah, but it's like a jangly Western themey intro. Like it worked out perfectly.
No.
Yeah.
It was so awful.
No, I'm on board for this. This is a great interpretation.
So, I expected, because I hadn't remembered this episode, probably because I blocked it out from some sort of trauma defense. I expected that the next, like, we would open the actual episode up with them on the Enterprise going, look what we found, some weird Western town, but we do not.
Nope.
We are right back in town.
Which, honestly, probably a fine choice.
It was fine, yes. So, I'll save my overall thoughts for the end. I wanted to give the preface that I'm not a big fan of Westerns and I don't like holodeck episodes, so that you can have context while I'm actually summarizing. I have thoughts about how the episode was constructed and stuff, but I'll save that for throughout and at the end. So we are back with basically the dead guy. He's been pulled out of the tree and a school marm is buying him a coffin. This is where we find out that they are called Skags, the aliens.
Did you know she was a school marm? Did she have school marm on her shirt?
What?
You're spoiling the episode, God.
Oh, okay. She was the only one wearing... Okay, sorry. I've seen Westerns, and she was a woman who wasn't a prostitute. Therefore, school
fair.
marm.
That's fair, yeah.
I have to ask, did either of you two recognize her?
No.
So, her name is Emily Burgle. She plays Tess from Miss Maisel.
Oh.
It's Susie's sister. And she also plays Francie in Kelsey's favorite show, Gilmore Girls.
Interesting. Huh.
Like, I saw her, I was like, is that? Like, I couldn't really tell. It's totally her, yeah.
Two shows I have not seen.
She must have been young in this then.
She didn't look much over, like, the mid-20s. She still had, like, a
I gotta
round
imagine,
face.
Like, this was being filmed around the same time as Gilmore Girls, and she played a high schooler, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, but also in the 2000s, some 40-year-olds were playing high schoolers, so it's really rough to tell based on that metric.
Also true.
I mean, you saw the first Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Archer is here kind of watching this all happen. He is incognito inside his Western getup, which is basically a duster and a cowboy hat. I'm annoyed because there isn't anyone who doesn't look fucking cool in a duster. Dusters, like, Rob, do you remember when I used to wear a duster?
Yeah.
Man, it was such a
I also
cool jacket.
remember when you used to wear a jacket that doubled as a sleeping bag. So
I didn't wear that, the Bundeswehr. I didn't wear that all the time. I just used it as a sleeping bag sometimes.
yeah. Then there was that one time you covered yourself from the rain with nothing but trash bags.
Yeah, I made a poncho out of trash bags. You're acting like this is somehow not a normal thing.
I thought you were going to mention the Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, college. No, that's fashion right there. So yeah, Archer is a pretty standard Western outfit. Duster, cowboy hat, boots, pistol. He meets up with him, T'Pol, and Trip are all on this planet trying to figure out why this planet exists, or at least why the settlement exists on this planet. T'Pol tells him that they, through her surreptitious scans, they are in fact humans. These are not like aliens; they are humans. The Skag was an alien, but the other people are humans. And Archer's like, "What the fuck is that all about?" And they're like, "Well." So they find out that there is an encampment of aliens nearby. So Trip and T'Pol are going to go check that out while Archer stays in town to see what he can learn. Because the first thing we're going to do is split up.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this little discussion is when he tells them, keep a low profile. Like, he's immediately going to mess that up himself.
Yeah. Minor note here. Apparently, this episode was also the first episode of Star Trek that was ever broadcast with a rating of TV-14 for violence.
Huh.
Was it the lynching, do you think?
I assume so.
You know what? Well, it could have been that, but I think that towards the end, when Archer gets shot in the shoulder...
Oh, yeah,
we do have...
He's got a little bit of a wound going on.
He's got a pretty good wound.
Really
I noticed that,
like a chunk of his shoulder.
Yeah.
I noticed that, too.
Something to do with it, too.
Which is actually, and you know what? Yeah, that might be it because like usually Star Trek just does the phaser like stun wipeout thing where like there's no wounds or anything. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Trip and T'Pol, in order to get out to the Skag camp, need to find a horse. So they go to the stable and they're like, "Hey, we need a horse." And the guy's like, "What happened to your horse?" He's like, "Well, our horse," and then T'Pol's like, "They died of heat exhaustion while we were coming into town. Can we just buy a new one so it can also die of heat exhaustion, please?" Luckily,
that's
though,
what horses are for.
This is the Old West. So he's like, "Fuck yeah." He offers the horse for $20. Trip's like, "I ain't got cash, but here's a harmonica, and I just need it for renting." So, good old harmonica for horse renting exchange, just like in the Old West.
And gun for collateral.
And then he gave him his colt for collateral. This is the point where I was looking at T'Pol's outfit and Trip's outfit, which are both very like Old Western, like appropriate. And I realized that the quartermaster probably had like a field day with this. I've decided the quartermaster is got like bisexual theater kid energy. like clearly is like having a fucking day of it when he has to make outfits.
Sure.
Like stuff like this is probably really fun for them too, because like how maybe once a season they get to do a little bit of like a period piece,
I feel like that's a scene in Lower Decks at some point. Like
I'm surprised there isn't like, I guess because by the time Lower Decks around, they've got the replicators and shit.
That's true.
But yeah, it would be fun to just be like, what's that sewing machine noise? And just see someone down and got some music going, some show tunes going. It's just cranking out some fucking dusters.
Yep.
So after their little exchange, they've secured this horse for a few hours. And T'Pol very appropriately asks, like, "Do you know how to like ride this thing?" And Trip's like, "How hard could it be?" That's not how horse riding works. Like,
this is funny. I enjoyed this.
It's not
I
like
liked it too, yeah.
Point the horse where you need to go and hope.
I like how he just like gestures at the horse, like,
like,
come on.
Yeah. There are specific commands that you have to give horses. That's how they work.
Yeah, you have to say yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, usually it's putting a little pressure in their flank, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where my note is like, so like my general issue with Westerns is that it's the same story over and over and over again. This is no different, and it's really not. They go, Archer, while Trip and T'Pol are heading off to the alien camp, Archer goes to the saloon. The bartender's like, what can I get you? And Archer's like, whatever's free, because they have no money.
So while we're here, apparently the bartender's ancestor, who we learned about here, Cooper Smith, right, was named after a character on Wagon Train from 1957.
Oh, that's funny.
That is, remember that. Pin that note.
Okay.
Did you two notice that, like, starting in this scene right here, Bakula's acting, like, hit another level this episode?
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just like he does shitty gruff guys pretty okay, because like he did all right actually in this one.
I know what it is. Bakula is in a different time, pretending to be someone he's not. It's totally Quantum Leap.
He's Quantum Leap.
He's Quantum Leap this episode.
It's like, man, if only Sam could see me now.
Oh boy. Well, he did like a couple seasons ago.
Part of it too, I think, is that like I think part of Bakula's issue is that he's not a very good body actor, and when you're wearing a blue jumpsuit and that's it, like you have to be a good body actor to convince someone of emotions and stuff. But when you're mostly covered in duster and cowboy hat, like you can hide a lot of that shit.
Yeah, you just tip your hat.
Right, exactly. And like, it doesn't matter who does it. Sweeping your duster around your pistol is cool. Like, it doesn't, there's no, like, that's just automatically awesome. So yeah, he goes to the bar. He's like, give me whatever's free. The bartender's like, coffee's always free, which is, yeah, that's nice. I wonder where they're getting the coffee, and I have other questions as well that are logistical. We'll get to that.
I feel like those all fall under the moments. Don't ask too many questions category.
We'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there in a few minutes. So one of the things that we learn is that there are only 6,000 humans in these like scattered settlements around this area, and there's about 1,000 skags.
Skagaran.
Yes, Skagarans.
Every time they said skags in this, it made me think of Borderlands.
I thought at first I heard scab, and I'm like, oh, are these pro-union guys? They're hanging this scab. Yeah. So we'll get to a logistical question I have in a little bit. So the bad guy, which is of course the crooked deputy, because like it's a Western. He's the one who hung the skag yesterday. He comes in with his like buddies, because they always have like a little like boy toy gang that they tool around with, because Westerns.
Their posse.
Yeah. It's not really a posse. It's not. So the problem is that in Western lingo, posse is a loaded term. It actually means something very specific.
Sure.
These are just his bros.
Right.
So they come in and they start fucking with like the skag like help that is there. This like kid, this Skagaran kid who works at the bar. The bartender's like, I'm gonna go get the sheriff, and he like wanders out. The shitty deputy's like, here, drink this, and the kid obviously doesn't want to drink, and he's like, well, your friend drank a whole bunch, and before he killed that guy. And then the kid's like, he didn't drink, and the guy's like, say that again, motherfucker. And then he hands him a gun and is like, shoot me then. And the kid doesn't want to shoot him. And then he's like, well, then I'll shoot you. And then the only time I've ever been like, that was a pretty good line, was Archer goes, hey, can I get some more coffee before you shoot him? He says to the skag kid.
It was so good.
That was good. Yeah, I very much enjoyed that.
And this, of course, diffuses the situation long enough for the sheriff and the bartender to come back. And this is the moment where I kind of took a look around the set dressing, because here we have a very classically dressed, like Old West saloon. I didn't hear any piano, but like,
it's too early in the day for him. He comes in later in the evening.
Yeah, maybe it's either coffee or piano. You can't have both. But like, we got bottles of liquor, we've got all this stuff. And I started asking the question, where is all of this coming from? because we're going to find out that these humans have been here for 300 years, and the why of it is kind of relevant in a little bit. But, like, there's only 6,000 of them. Who's manufacturing everything? Because these are tiny little towns.
Well, all we know for certain is it's not from the south, because the only thing that land's good for is Bluehorn.
Bluehorn,
That's true.
right. Right.
Whatever those are.
Fun fact about the Wild West. It was not self-sufficient, at least not in the sense that, like, we think of the Wild West. Those towns with those, like, boardwalk, forget the name of them, but like those saloon, like looking old Westy town buildings and stuff with like all the glass windows and all the metal fixtures and shit. Like, they are not self-sufficient towns. They relied on incoming like trade. Sure. And like a lot of imported goods. Those towns are good at making cows or sometimes growing stuff or mining gold. That was pretty much it.
That's why a lot of them came up around like either train routes or like carriageways.
Stagecoach ways. Yep. So what would happen is there were these long stagecoach lines before the train started coming out that like basically just hauled freight in for these towns. You know, you'd send out an order over the telegraph after the Pony Express fell apart. Did you know the Pony Express was only 18 months?
Yeah. Because it did not last long.
It felt like, because of how much we talk about it in our history class and stuff, like it feels like it's this institution that lasted decades. It lasted 18 months.
Well, and like culturally, like we used
this
to
seems
see
very much like the Confederacy.
Yeah.
People talking about it. It lasted so short a time.
So these towns don't have glass blowers. Like, they don't have, I mean, they would have a smith, obviously, because there's horses that need shoed and stuff. So they've definitely got like people who can make, some basic metal goods. They got carpenters and shit, but they don't have multiple kinds of stills to make different kinds of liquor. They don't have people who can make bottles. They don't have people who can, fun fact, manufacture guns. The Colt pistol was manufactured in New Jersey and Connecticut.
So, off of that, I'm like, where did all these guns come from?
Yeah.
They brought them with.
Oh,
so,
okay.
and the only reason that I'm bringing this up, because, I mean, I know there's a level of pedanticism where it's like, just enjoy it, Stanford. But, like, Star Trek, in this episode in particular, tries to set up these, like, fun what-ifs, but they're not, like, they could have done it better, but they didn't. And so it just ends up kind of falling flat, you know?
I don't think it falls flat, but I get what you're saying. Like, I think there's definitely a suspension of disbelief required for these types of episodes. But
sure.
Yeah.
I think the real cardinal sin is that, and like we'll learn this in a few moments here in the summary, but like we find out that these people were originally from Earth and abducted, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really upset that no future Star Trek shows have ever gone back and revisited this.
Well, and also,
this was a genuinely interesting concept.
I also thought throughout the episode, I'm like, so they've been here for 300 years. Literally no advancement whatsoever.
Yeah, which is extra funny, and I was going to get into this later, but I'll say it now, which is extra funny because at the end of the episode, the Enterprise has given the school marm like access to like a cultural database so that they have like history. So she starts talking about the Wright brothers. Okay. She even said only 40 years after we were abducted from Earth, the Wright brothers did this. And it's like, okay, the Wright brothers did that with like bicycle components and shit. Right. Y'all couldn't figure that out in 300
right. Nobody was
years?
Like, maybe I'll try to build something that flies.
You got a guy whose entire job is to cut hair, and you couldn't figure out an airplane?
So here's a question. I guess, how long ago were the humans, liberated on this planet? Like, at what point did Smith actually carry out his overthrow?
It sounded like it was about 200 and change years. It was not right away, but it wasn't too long after. I think Smith was one of the original abductees.
Okay. Yeah.
By the way, did you catch the thing reference in this episode? No. Is the names of the sheriff and the deputy were McReady and Bennings, or McReady or whatever.
Oh, that's fun. I didn't notice that.
Yep.
That is fun.
We find out that the sheriff is also pretty crooked. but not quite as crooked.
It's like bad, but not like super bad.
Like he's totally fine with this guy killing the occasional alien, but like try not to do it too much.
Right.
He says a little hot for coffee, which is a stupid line. That's just a stupid thing to say. So
Never too hot for coffee.
he tells Archer to leave. And Archer's like, ugh. We cut to Trip and T'Pol, who are at the alien camp. The alien camp is actually in the like skeleton of a crashed alien ship. And they're scouting it out, and then we get away from there. We cut out of there. We don't stay with them at all. Like we're done talking to them. We go back to Archer for some reason, and he goes and talks to the school marm. She's obviously a school marm. And I was like, yep, it's the school teacher. And then he's like, you're a teacher. And I'm like, yeah, so there we go. She takes him to the Skag camp as well. And it's because she's about to teach the Skags like a class, even though that's illegal. Skags aren't allowed to learn anything. This is where we start to find out the history. As far as I could tell, let me this is what we learned, okay? And this is as far as I could tell, this was the Skagaran plan, okay? The Skagarans wanted to build a colony on a planet, but as we all know, building colonies takes a lot of labor. So rather than just paying some people to do that, we are going to travel light years to a primitive planet, scoop up a bunch of humans and their horses and bring them back to work our colony for us. And then
that totally seems logical and efficient.
And once we drop the ship with the prisoners off, and I guess whatever Skagaran are in charge of that colony, we get out of there. Like, we never come back to this planet ever again. Because, like, these people never got any reinforcements. It was just them.
Well, that's why they needed the slaves, because the rest of their population died on their home planet. So no other Skagarans out there.
Oh, it would be so fucking funny if they ended up at a Skagaran planet later in the season.
That would be funny. See, like, this is what I mean. They need follow-up.
I don't disagree. But it's just so, I don't know. They obviously wanted to do a Western episode. Their justification for it is not great. They could have done better with a little bit more focus on that part of the writing, but they were clearly too busy making cool dusters.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because there is a real world example of basically this exact same situation happening. Say you're a super rich country that basically you think that your people are better than other types of people, okay?
Sure.
So you decide, I'm going to pay to have people from another country shipped here and then work them as slaves to build soccer stadiums to host a soccer tournament in one of the most impractical.
I was thinking your example would have been
world.
farther back, but no, this happened several years ago.
Yeah, it's the UAE.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. I could see it happening.
So I'm going to push back in one way.
Okay.
There's a difference between we want to build a soccer stadium, so we have to trick people into coming in and then taking away their passports, and we have to travel hundreds of light years via warp travel in order to get some people who can, I guess, put some nails into wood. I'm not even sure what labor they were supposed to be doing.
Look, tomato, I think it's accurate. It's fine.
Thank you, Chris.
If this was an allegory for slavery, which I think it may have been trying to be at some points, it was not well done, because a lot of the time was
non-committal in that regard, I would
because
say.
a lot of the lines out of Archer was like, it happened 200 years ago. You need to get over it. It's like, oh.
Well, it seemed like they wanted to do a Western.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, but we're Star Trek, so we gotta have to put some type of, moral quandary into this. So we'll just insert this.
It would have been better. Here's the thing. If you wanted to do it a Western allegory, this is where I'm talking about, like, they could have just spent an extra 5 minutes thinking about this, because this storyline is dumb. But if you wanted to do it well, you just say,
dumb.
sure, these aliens abducted an entire town and their horses. That's the cause of one ghost town in the Midwest. You know, a stupid explanation for ghost towns, but, like, it's fun. Like, there's a fun little connection there. Because old Western ghost towns are a real thing. So these aliens abducted, like, all of these towns and took them to this planet where they dropped them off and, like, kept them supplied. So that answers all your manufacturing questions. But it was like, I don't know, some kind of study or something. And so there were actually natives on the planet that were not of that race. They were, like, natives to the planet itself. And that would be your,
alien
like,
Voltec.
Native American, like, Western shit. But then, like, the aliens who were overseeing, the alien Voltec people who were overseeing it, like, they're now gone for whatever reason. Like, their study's over, they left. So now the towns are having a shortage of these manufactured goods, and it's becoming a problem. Like, that's a better central tension.
All right, so
I don't know. That seems like a lot of extra scenes that aren't involving Western shootouts. I don't know, man.
No, she could have just told him in jail.
How did you feel about Westworld, Stanford?
I watched the first episode and never watched another episode.
Okay.
Because you didn't like it, or just
because it was
never
a Western.
did?
Like, whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like,
okay.
I understand it got cyberpunky or whatever later, but, like, it's I not only don't I like Westerns, I also don't like rich people. So, like, that show was on thin ice to begin with. Okay, so because the writers are not really great at this, Trip and T'Pol also show up when Archer shows up at this camp. So, like, we actually didn't need them to split up at all because we all ended up in the same place anyways. So the
I thought that
5
was funny.
seconds that we were with T'Pol and Trip earlier was
we wouldn't
useless.
have got that fun Trip trying to ride a horse scene if we didn't split them up.
Totally.
It would have been better if Archer showed up and Trip and T'Pol just then also got there because it took them so long because Trip didn't know how to ride a horse. See, that would have been a good moment. Man, Enterprise should have hired me.
Yeah.
Or they go riding through the camp, Trip falls off comically, like, in front of everybody, and then T'Pol comes back in perfect control of the horse.
Yeah, she knows how to ride a horse. That would be amazing. If T'Pol's like, I know how to ride a horse, and Trip's like, oh, damn. I don't know why Trip wasn't front man. He's the only one with a vaguely okay accent for this. Okay, so it turns out that Archer and Bethany is the name of the schoolmarm, they were followed to the camp by Douche Canoe and his boys.
Bennings.
Yeah, Douche Bennings and the Bennings bros. They are like, well, we're deputies and you're under arrest because you're not allowed to be schooling these skags. And then Archer's like, I didn't school them. And he's like, bleh. And so Archer punches one of the boys. And then he goes up to punch Douche Canoe. And, like,
Pistol whipped.
No, wait, did he have a pistol? I don't think he had his pistol out, did he?
Yeah, he got pistol whipped.
Oh, that's what
yeah.
happened. It looked like he just kind of cat scratched him across the forehead.
No, he pistol whipped.
Which was really ridiculous.
right on the
Although,
forehead.
now that I know it was a pistol whip, that makes more sense.
What, you mean why Archer went down like a sack of potatoes?
No, I just assumed that Archer sucks always. But no, I was just wondering why this guy chose to just go like at Archer's forehead there in the middle of a fight. So as the Archer comes to in the jail, the schoolmarm explains the rest of the history, and this is where, like, it turns out that these people know that they are from Earth. They know that they were kidnapped and brought across, like, stars. Like, they know that they were brought in on a spaceship. And that's where I was like, you know all of this shit, but you didn't, like, technologically advance in 300 years?
Right.
You just stayed a Western town.
They're like, well, we know it's possible, but meh.
It's like, I got too much piano to be played and to be doing no studying. Steve over there's got to cut hair. Like,
I think I realized, Chris, why Stanford has the opinions of Star Trek that he does. Like,
Okay.
it just hit me. Stanford, you do not have a suspension of disbelief. It's non-existent.
Okay, so let me tell you about that fucking phrase. All right. Suspension of disbelief means I know it's not real, therefore I can still enjoy it. It does not allow things to not have internal consistency. Okay? I need things to be internally consistent. I understand that Thor has magic and can call lightning down to zap Thanos. Whatever. But as soon as you start telling me about how Scott Lang is shrinking his body down by taking away space between atoms, then how the fuck is he still heavy enough to punch anyone? Like, that's not how it works. So you have to be internally consistent. That's why I like Brandon Sanderson, because he's got such internally consistent rules.
I don't know. It just sounds like you're not fun to me.
I'm lots of fun. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm fun, goddammit.
I have parties. So anyways, so my next question is minimum sentence of 10 years. So I guess they have like a prison, a full court system for 6,000 people. Wow, that dude's wearing a fancy silk vest. I guess 6,000 people, but they can spare enough for silk farmers and dyers. And yeah, I'm not that fun. That's a lot of glass. Who's making that? Yeah. Yeah, all right, fair enough. I do conclude that segment of my notes with fuck dusters are so cool though.
They are.
So Archer and Schoolmarm stage a prison break. They stage, I guess they do it. They get out.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good line. It's like, well,
it's staged in that Archer goes in and punched the one jail guard in the face. The one
dude, yeah. They drag him in, and then like they're riding. Archer and the Schoolmarm are riding out on this like fucking carriage, like to get away from town. And the deputy, in like a weird slow-mo gunshot, like shoots the Schoolmarm.
That was like classic falling off the Western wagon, just got shot action right there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, somehow you get shot backwards, even though you're going in the opposite direction from them.
She got shot in the back. You know how like when you hit something in your back and you like arch backwards, like that's what happened.
Hurt so bad the pain threw her from
the cart. Yeah.
Her spasm threw her from the cart. Listen, as someone whose legs spasm all the time, I could tell you they can do some pretty impressive things. Archer jumps down to see if she's okay. She's not okay. She's been shot. So he tells Enterprise to beam them up. I'm not sure if we called it out in a previous episode, but one of our bingo card slots is multi-human transporting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I noticed it did happen in a previous episode. It was Extinction, but I am now explicitly calling it out on the podcast that multi-human transfers, and well, I guess she's not technically. Beaming out freaks everybody out. Act 3. Dr. Phlox is taking a look at the teacher. Teacher is, it turns out, part Skag on her grandmother's side. Which is like, oh, so the humans and Skags are doing the dirty. Okay, whatever. The sheriff's like berating the crooked deputy because the sheriff's basically like, I need to stop being crooked. And the deputy's like, well, I still want to be crooked. Meh. And
I'm gonna resign.
And the sheriff's like, well, you're not gonna be crooked under my badge. And he's like, well, I ain't working for you no more. And he throws the badge at him. It's standard Western scene. Hoshi gives us a little history lesson. And then I don't know who said it. I think it was Archer, because I think it may have been Hoshi was like, no, they kidnapped these people. And Archer goes, they kidnapped the wrong people. And I'm like, yeah, USA. Like, because obviously, the labor force that they've taken from Earth did not decide to be cooperative and overthrew their alien Skag overlords. And in setting up a society, the man Cooper Smith, who I guess led the rebellion, in setting up the society, he basically set all these laws about who can, that the Skags are basically not allowed to participate in society. It is not explained why the Skags didn't just like leave then. Cause it's not like,
cause they found their ship.
The ship was there anyways, right? It crashed. But like, the ship is not useful. It's just a fucking hole, like a hull. Like, just
Like, why didn't they just make a settlement somewhere?
yeah.
Is that what
Why
you're
did they
saying?
just go somewhere else? Oh, you know what? Actually, this was answered. It's because they're too lazy to do any work for themselves, so
Oh no! Oh no!
they had to kidnap some humans.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Archer and team decide that the best way to handle this is to just go down and talk to the sheriff about what's going on, because these people are from Earth and they know they are from Earth. So it's not going to be hard to convince them that it's like, hey, we're also from Earth.
Mm-hmm.
They go down. Did we already do the shaving scene?
No, you skipped right by that when
Yeah,
you were
you skipped
realizing
by
that
that.
you weren't fun.
Oh yeah, that tracks. The
The
shaving,
intimidating barber.
yeah. Oh yeah, what's with the intimidating barber in the background of this dumb speech is what I have. 6,000. Oh, that was one of my,
wiping his
6,000
blade off.
people, and this guy could be spared to just cut hair. Like, that's his
Also,
whole
I don't
life.
think that man knows how to shave people, because he was
No, he
like
does not.
he was like moving the blade like in the wrong direction in like several wrong directions. Like, what is he doing?
Chris, have you ever been shaved on this alien planet?
I know how human hair grows.
Shut up.
Listen.
Who can't suspend their disbelief now? Yes.
Maybe the sheriff was like 1/4 Skagaran as well, and like they had to watch out for the cheek boils or whatever.
Yeah, that might be.
So they go down and are going to talk to the sheriff, who's effectively in charge of this town. We do not get any sense of like a government, which, like, I understand that sheriffs had a lot to do in these old Western towns, but like in Hollywood old Westerns, we're only talking about criminals and outlaws. In the real world, these towns had like mayors and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's in charge of the town? Apparently it's just this sheriff.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a sheriff, mayor, sheriff.
Sheriff, mayor, sheriff, in his town hall, the barbershop.
He's the schmeriff.
The sheriff.
He's the sheriff.
Archer's talking to the sheriff. The sheriff's like, okay, but like, hey, like, yeah, these guys kind of suck. And Archer's like, well, you gotta be nicer to them because we've moved past things like intolerance. To which I replied,
as a matter of fact, later this season, there is at least 3 episodes that show that humans from Earth can be just as racist and intolerant.
Like, look how they treat the Vulcans.
The crew compliment that came down was Archer, Reed, T'Pol, and 2 Mako people. Wait, was T'Pol there? Yeah, T'Pol was there too, right?
Mm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because she winds up being held hostage during the gunfight.
Oh, that's right. So they have shown back up in their like space clothes instead of their Western clothes. Although I wouldn't have hated if Archer just wore the duster from now on, like over his jumpsuit.
Oh, he should.
What about the cowboy hat? Does that stay
Nah,
good?
I don't. No, hats aren't efficient on spaceships. Like they just get caught in shit. Yeah.
True. Fair.
Although I said like make sure y'all wear something like bulletproof. They spoiler they do not. So they come back out. The sheriff and Archer come back out and be like, we settled things. And the plan is that like, hey, we can't take all 300 of you on the ship right now. We're on this mission where we're being totally tolerant of another alien species for sure. So we're going to let Earth know you're here. And when we can, we will come back for you. But it might be a while because the Expanse sucks and we've got to go be very tolerant to these people. The sheriff's
tolerance.
like, all right. And Archer's also like, hey, stop treating the skags like asses. And the guy's like, all right, fine. So the sheriff is like, yay, everybody. But then
Wow!
Douche Canoe comes back and he's got some more bros.
Deputy Douche Canoe.
Well, he's
he-
not deputy anymore.
Oh, that's right. He gave up his star.
Yeah, no, he was former deputy.
Former deputy douche canoe.
He tells everyone to have your men drop those guns, which is a little sexist because one of the Makos is clearly a lady. And T'Pol's there. Like, this guy's all kinds of douchey. However, this is the point where I'm like, just shoot him. Just shoot him. Just shoot him. Shoot him. Go ahead and shoot him.
Hey, Reed did the thing.
We get this old Western shootout, which is, okay, in concept, this was cool. The people with the guns shooting at the people with the phasers. A conceptually fun idea. It is not executed well. Mostly because,
I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I did too.
No. The reason it sucked, and y'all are wrong, is because if they had any kind of sense that the Mako people were bad shots because they were like afraid they might get hit with a bullet, which they're not really prepared for because when dude just shoots bullets anymore, yada yada yada, fine. But like there is a specific moment where they literally show her back in that like quick sniper view where she shoots a guy like from across town because
those rifles are so cool.
Lasers don't miss. So like, just do that again. But she stopped. She used her scope on one dude and was like, I'm done. That was my quota of shooting dudes right now. So like, it's once again, it's those kind of artificial stakes. Like, y'all are way more competent than these assholes. Just take care of them.
Counterpoint.
But also,
You're not fun.
Guns are. Here's another fun fact, and this is a fun fact, which is why it's fun. Guns are not accurate. They are wickedly inaccurate. Most shootouts in the Wild West involved so many bullets missing. Most shootouts in the modern day involve bullets missing. So, like, there's no way those guys were threats to these fucking people. You can't shoot a Colt pistol from 300 yards away or wherever that dude was on that house. And
to be fair, the only one who did get shot was Archer, and it was like close to point blank range.
He ran up and like fucking.
Excuse me, T'Pol also got shot.
Yeah. So at some point, one of the douche canoe bros.
Reed, because Reed shoots her.
Sneaks up and's got T'Pol and has a gun to her head. He's got T'Pol around like in the classic hostage stance, and Reed's like, and he just shoots T'Pol. And then the guy is so surprised that then Reed shoots him. And I couldn't tell from Reed's face if that was intentional or not.
It was definitely intentional.
But it was fun either way.
Again, it was fun. It was very fun.
It was fun. It was fun. You're no fun. This scene was fun.
Because Enterprise cannot be satisfied with just an okay shootout scene, we have to get into some fisticuffs with Archer.
They do like putting Archer into fisticuffs.
So yeah, well, it's a bailing. I was also like, why is there a meat hook here? It is a bailing hook for like hay bales.
Oh, okay.
However, you do not keep an unsecured sharp metal object in a stall with a horse. Because fun fact, horses are stupid as shit. Like, they're dumb animals.
Dude,
well, they're majestic beasts. What are you talking about?
Yeah, majestic does not mean not dumb.
They missed a really opportune moment for a very important Western trope of the bad guy getting kicked by a horse.
Kicked by a horse, true. Yes. Or the comedic Western trope of someone like falling into poop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they could only cram so many in.
So many. They had to get that shaving scene in, man. It's required. Yeah. So Archer runs up at the last dude. No one can cover him because, that's not dramatic enough.
Well, okay, so also, he gets shot, right? And instead of, like, running towards the people, his allies there, who are armed and could shoot the guy, goes to a barn.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where I was like, why doesn't super accurate lady just not take care of everyone right now? Like, that's her entire job. I've played games where Rob is sniping. I don't have to shoot anybody. Rob takes care of them all. Like, no one covers Archer. He runs up, he gets shot in the shoulder, and they fucking went to 11 with that wound.
What did he get shot with? Birdshot? Jesus.
Yeah, apparently that Colt round was like a fucking hollow point ablative or some shit.
I liked how at the beginning of the fisticuffs, he was definitely like favoring his arm, but by the end of the fisticuffs scene, he was totally like fine.
Yeah, it only takes about 5 minutes for a shoulder shot to not be bothering you anymore.
Yeah, clearly.
Side note, Phlox has seen entirely too many gunshot victims today.
That's true. So we're back up on Enterprise, and everyone's getting all patched up and everything's fine. And the school mom's like, y'all are so advanced and we're still down there shooting each other. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And she kind of asks the question, like, why haven't things changed in 300 years? And I have the same question, but that doesn't, we move past that. We get to a final scene where the Enterprise is warping away, and we get a scene where the school mom is now teaching Skag children and human children in the schoolhouse. So, like, obviously that law has changed. And she's explaining, like, just 40 years after thing, these boys named the Wright brothers invented a flying machine. And the sheriff comes in to kind of look in on the class. And in what is probably the best moment of the episode, she goes, all right, everybody, who would like to see a picture of their flying machine? And the sheriff raises his hand like, I'd like to see that shit. Like,
yeah, that was really cool.
It was a good thing to go out touch. On. So that wraps the episode.
The very fun episode.
Here's what I'll say. Okay, no, you know what? Let's do it this way. On a scale from 1 to 5, where 0 is threshold, what are y'all's ratings? We'll start with Rob. I should write these down.
I gave this one a 4.
Okay.
Because it was very fun. I thought that, like, it's really funny, like, talking through this again. I was originally going to give it a 3. And after talking through it, I realized that it was a very fun episode. Like, yes, it's a filler episode. No, the central tension of the plot that's currently going on with the whole Expanse thing, it didn't really have any advancement. But as far as filler episodes go, this was very fun. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a 3. Pretty much for the same reasons you stated. It was fun. So, it was an enjoyable watch. I generally enjoyed the time I spent watching it. There was some fun humor. I, unlike Stanford, do enjoy a Western, no matter how the same plot they are. I'll usually be able to sit there and enjoy them. It's popcorn. It's popcorn stuff. But obviously not impactful in for the greater storyline or really examining any moral issues in any effective way at all. So 3 for me.
All right. So here's the thing. So my biggest complaint is that there was no musical pieces with whip cracks involved. Or whatever instrument makes that noise.
Right.
Okay. So
rattlesnake at the end.
I had to think about how to rate this episode because I had to be I have to be objective, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at my rating systems, and I'm like, well, how good can I go for this, really? Because, 3 is supposed to be standard Star Trek. And does this feel like standard Star Trek to me? No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like standard Star Trek.
Give us your subjectively objective opinion on this.
Because, this isn't Star Trek. But I did enjoy the episode, so I had to give it a 4. So here's the thing. I'm not opposed to the occasional filler episode. I understand why they happen, and I understand in a 26 episode season or whatever, you gotta have them. Especially in a weekly reset kind of show generally. Filler episodes are gonna happen. It's okay. As much as I'm not generally a fan of Westerns, I think that this one took the tropes and packaged them in a almost sightseeing kind of way that kind of worked for being a filler Star Trek episode. They're not trying to make a Western story. They're trying to make the Star Trek bros go through Western town. Western story. In that way, it weirdly worked. And despite all the pedantry that I like to seed in during these analyses, the story itself was actually fine. It was a fine little plot, and the guest star actors all did a great job. Obviously, people who have experience acting in this milieu. And Archer was fine. Trip and T'Pol weren't in it enough to matter. T'Pol basically spoke with one person the entire time that wasn't like a member of the crew. And she had that kind of like Vulcan conversation. And I was worried that they were going to do that too much, but they only did it the once to kind of give you that little like, she used a real fancy word with this simple Western person, but then moved on. So they handled it pretty well. I was entertained throughout the entire episode.
I am stunned.
Shocked. Shaken to my very
If it had ended with like Archer riding off into the sunset with a whip crack, I probably would have given it a 5. Like,
like Bethany on the back of his horse.
Yeah, or T'Pol because he's not taking Bethany with him. Yeah. I would have probably given it a 5 at that.
What if it
point.
was like shuttle pod into the sunset? Would that have qualified?
No, because I need to see the hat. So like if Archer rode the shuttle pod, it would have been a 6. Like it would have been.
What if the shuttle pod just had a very big hat on top?
Still a 6. Like hat plus shuttle pod, automatic 6.
What if they lassoed the shuttle pod?
Oh my God, a lasso from the shuttle pod to a horse or something would have been great too.
Oh, that would have been fun.
What if they replaced the grappling hooks with lassos on Enterprise?
Oh my God, yes. Or done like a train heist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the major Western tropes we missed in this one was train heist.
Was any kind of like high-speed heist, like a stagecoach or a train?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll be back with a deep dive just after this little break. Welcome back. So, for this deep dive, I want to talk about the concept of a sci-fi Western, because this is actually an entire subgenre of science fiction. This episode does not count. So
No, it's just Firefly.
It's just, well, sure, okay. So
Star Wars?
Yeah, Jesus Christ, we're gonna get there. So generally when we talk about a Western sci-fi, what we're talking about is a sci-fi story that is science fiction with ships and lasers and stuff, but has a lot of the themes and motifs of classic Western fiction. So it's not. So this episode just takes people who are from science fiction and puts them in a Western. That's not quite how it works. So interestingly, science fiction and Westerns actually have a very similar origin story. Both of them were seen as like kind of pulpy, consumable fiction back when books were still pretty expensive. The term pulp magazine or pulp fiction, it was not actually created by Quentin Tarantino, believe it or not. It is because pulp was wood pulp was a cheap material to make shitty paper out of. So they would be able to make a lot of these crappy magazines and books out of paper made from like excess wood pulp, and that's why cheap shitty fiction is called pulp fiction. Although at the time it was considered cheap shitty fiction. Today, some of our like foundational authors, especially in science fiction, started with pulp. Like Heinlein, Asimov, Bradbury, Clarke to an extent. Like these are all authors that started in these like quote unquote crappy little pulp magazines. And that's mostly because, and which is still somewhat true, science fiction, fantasy, these are not considered like real reading in literature. They're considered like low class crappy fiction. Like if you want to read fiction, you have to go read Hemingway. That's proper capital L literature fiction. Those people are stupid, by the way. We don't believe that.
Yeah.
But Westerns, Western fiction actually predates sci-fi by a couple of decades. And they weirdly, Western, a very popular Western author was one of the people who inspired Hitler, because there was this random German dude who wrote these stories about this German gunslinger that wandered around the American West and like was a hero. I don't know.
Weird.
The very first episode of Behind the Bastards talked about him, and it's fucking ridiculous. So when we talk about Western science fiction, though, they're also called space Westerns. We don't start to see this kind of blending of things as an actual genre until we get into the 30s and 40s. A lot of comic books would do it, but you're also talking about things like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, those kinds of stories, which were very much, like Buck Rogers is just a Texas Ranger who happens to be in space, right? Flash Gordon is just that guy who goes town to town and saves everybody. That's very Western trope. Let's see. By the 60s, actual Western films started becoming less favorable. Western films were popular because of a couple of reasons. One, they were very American and, America woo. Two, they were relatively inexpensive to film.
Yeah, that I do, yeah.
Because, blank ammunition is cheap as shit. And on old footage, it's easy to make a gunfight look very exciting without actually having people get shot. And indeed, it's actually very easy to film very extensive action scenes where the actors aren't even in the same room at the same time.
Just stuntmen.
Right. So because they were fairly cheap to make and they were also very popular, that meant that they were a very easy way to make money. In the 60s, though, we start to get away from Western film and we start getting, but more interestingly, we start getting space Western TV shows. And I'm sure you all can guess what was basically considered the foundational first space Western show. Yeah, that's right. It was Lost in Space. So Lost in Space, have either of you seen this show?
So not really. I saw the movie remake and the new Netflix reboot of it.
Oh,
it's actually very good. I would check it out, if you haven't. But I never really watched the original.
I saw the Superior Galaxy Quest.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, Lost in Space is basically like Gilligan's Island, but with a spaceship instead of a boat. And it was also very it fell into the same era. Well, it fell into the same kind of genre as almost like Little House on the Prairie, although that was a much later show because I think that was the 80s. My mom used to watch the shit out some Little House on the Prairie. But Lost in Space was like a family that was lost because they went through a wormhole or whatever and was just catapulted into a random part of the galaxy. Their ship wasn't working anymore, so they're just on a planet. This is the show that popularized Robbie the Robot. Danger, danger, Will Robinson.
Yep, right.
That's Lost in Space. The Robinson family. It also had a lot of classic Western tropes. It also had some other classic tropes, such as the gay villain.
The what?
Yeah, the doctor is the bad guy in it, and he's super gay coded in that kind of classic, late 50s, early 60s kind of way. Lost in Space was originally in black and white. I think the last couple seasons were in color, though, if I recall correctly. But a pretty typical show of the period, but it was science fiction based, which is kind of interesting. The other big show that, of course, kind of made space westerns a thing was Star Trek. Star Trek was pitched originally as Wagon Train to the Stars. So I don't know if you remember, Chris, when I told you to put a pin in Wagon Train.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That is what Star Trek originally was as a concept. And when you look at it from a perspective of, which is why actually the other thing too is when Rob mentioned that every single series has a Western episode except for the original series. That's kind of a funny observation because the original series was pitched and kind of developed originally as a Western in concept.
Right.
But it definitely took a step back from that dusty old Western kind of mood and more towards the tropes of the traveling people trying to do good on a frontier of space. Not so much gunfights and whip cracks and shit. Not a lot of horse riding. But Star Trek basically proved that, like, oh, this could do it, right? So what ended up happening was in the 70s and 80s, and this is what one guy who directed a movie called Outland. I don't know if either of you have seen that. Sean Connery.
Nope.
Okay. Outland is basically High Noon, but in space. Have you seen High Noon?
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. It literally is. That's what it was. That was what it was written to be. It was High Noon, but in space. Sean Connery's in a space station. He's the lawman on a space station, et cetera, et cetera. But Peter Hyams, the director of Outland, kind of illustrates the point that, like, by the 70s and 80s, studios weren't buying Westerns anymore because no one was really watching them. But because of Star Wars, science fiction caught this weird resurgence. So basically, Peter Hyams is pointing out that, like, if you want to make a Western, you just put a laser in it. You could get a studio to buy it.
Sure.
So, yes. And so, like, yeah. Space operas such as Star Wars also feature a lot of big Western kind of themes and tropes in them. Star Wars did, especially in the earlier parts of the first movie, when we're on Tatooine, we're on kind of a dusty frontier town. The law is kind
There's
of
a saloon.
Yeah, the law is kind of ambiguous. The cantina is there. Yep.
There's duels,
Han Solo's original costume and charming rogue gunslinger mannerism also reflects that kind of Western influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, the space Westerns kind of took, like, the mantle of the things that people were kind of getting out of Westerns and just kind of took it on themselves instead. This was not an entirely popular concept among science fiction fans. So Galaxy Science Fiction is a magazine that ran for a long time. It was kind of one of the last, like, great pulp magazines. And they actually had a advertisement on the back of their magazine that wrote, like, a 2-paragraph science fiction story and then a 2-paragraph, like, Western scene that are, like, identical, except for, like, they subbed in the space words for the horse words, basically. And their advertisement is, sound alike? They should. One is merely a Western transplanted to some alien impossible planet. If this is your idea of science fiction, you're welcome to it. You'll never find it in Galaxy. So, like, it's funny that in a genre, science fiction, that was considered kind of a, like, podunk, like, poor person's fiction, that even they are like, well, I mean, that's not proper science fiction. If you're
people
putting a
just
Western
love to
theme into
gatekeep, man.
Yes, the tribalism is very strong. Outland, as well as some smaller cartoons in the 80s, things I've actually never heard of, Brave Star, The Adventures of Galaxy Rangers. These kind of repopularized the space westerns in terms of television, because don't forget, Star Trek was off the air for 20 years,
Right.
So the television kind of environment for space westerns was mostly, like, aimed at children. But another kind of interesting influx of, like, oomph, can you guess?
Anime?
It is anime, yes. Trigun, Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, all these mid-90s animes that were coming over. I was just,
like, listing through those in my head. That's funny.
Yep, which were super Western themed, but were also science fiction. And Japanese media is often very playful with tropes and themes. So from a Japanese perspective, this seems very obvious that we would take, like, 2 genres of things and mix them together and create a thing that's cool. But to American audiences, this is like, oh, these aren't just for kids anymore. Like, we can watch this. Star Trek The Next Generation was out at this point, as was, like, DS9, but a lot of the Western theming had kind of fallen off.
Yeah.
The last, like, true space Western TV show that adults had was, like, Battlestar Galactica back in, like, the late 60s.
Right.
But then after this kind of mid-90s resurgence, we have basically Firefly to thank for rebooting the idea of, like, television space westerns. because this is the thing that basically directly leads to things like The Mandalorian and in some ways kind of Westworld becoming a popular series and things like that.
Right.
I have a question for you, Stanford. It's
Sure.
very important. Is Rebel Moon a space western?
So Rebel Moon was pitched as more Seven Samurai, but like there's some definitely overlapping themes there. So I wouldn't say it couldn't be. Because basically like Seven Samurai is a western but with Japanese themes, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I guess.
That was a lot less fun than I thought it was going to be.
Rebel Moon's such a shit
Serious
movie
right now.
He's being very serious.
Well, I'm on my roll here. Another interesting area where we find space westerns kind of coming to their own is actually in video games. Borderlands is mentioned, which does have very strong western themes.
Oh, yeah.
But actually one that you may not really have thought of too much, StarCraft was a space western.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Jim Raynor was the sheriff. Like that's
Yep.
how it worked. And, you know, I played the shit out of StarCraft back in the so
This is Jimmy.
these so the subgenre of space western has kind of had kind of like an interesting almost like roller coaster of reception, and now it is so popular that it's pretty much overdone. And this is where I'm going to start taking my own opinions. I'm good. I don't need any more space westerns in my life. There have been fucking plenty of them. So like stop please. Stop. Like let's move on.
I really like them. I know you hate me for it, but I want more.
Rob, I do
can
not
always
hate
use more.
you for it. I hate your opinion of them. It's an important distinction.
No, I mean, I don't have anything against it. I mean, yeah, they're fun.
I just find them, I don't know. Again, like my issue is that Western stories don't really change too much from story to story, because even all the things I named as space Westerns, they all have generally the same kind of story. Like it's not new stuff, you know.
Nothing's new anymore. Man.
Well, that's cheap. Don't be throwing that straw man out there. But like, and Mandalorian's a good example where it's like, okay, we've done all of this, and I found it just kind of boring. And you don't even get to see Pedro Pascal's face for most of it. So like, what's the point?
You know what the problem is with him? Nothing. It's that you're not fun.
Look, the amount of fun I am has no bearing on whether or not Mandalorian is good. So that's a brief dive into the concept of the space western. I read as a kid, because my dad gave them to me, this series of books called Lucky Star, where he was like, it was literally like a space ranger. That was a fun set of books. I'm sure they're super problematic if I read them again. It's probably like, oh, his sidekick was just a black slave or some shit. Like it was the fucking 50s or 60s. Like it was awful, I'm sure. But they were fun. He would go to the different planets and solve problems. That makes it sound more math blastery than I mean. Like it was like a fun romp. Have either of you watched any of the original Battlestar Galactica show?
No.
Yeah.
Oh man, that show was super westerny.
I'm surprised you didn't, Chris, because it was on before Stark at SG-1 on Sci-Fi.
Hell
Like,
yeah,
after
it
we got home
was.
from school.
Really?
It was on right after Quantum
Yeah.
Leap.
I
Yep.
remember I watched a bunch of Quantum Leap. You know what? Actually, now that you mention it, I remember I started to watch it one time and found it totally uninteresting, so never watched it.
What? I
Excellent.
can't figure out why you would say that.
Yeah, it was too old for me at the time.
Oh man, they had some good jackets though. So I don't know, what's y'all's favorite space western thing?
Mm.
Favorite? Oh, God. It's got to be a toss-up for me between Trigun and Cowboy Bebop. Like, I grew up during that, like, period of Adult
Yeah.
Swim. Like,
The
when it
Cowboy
got real
Bebop was the
big.
thing that immediately came to mind.
Yeah, I think it might be Cowboy Bebop. As much as I love Vash the Stampede, I think Spike's going to win out.
I didn't realize you were a couple of weeaboos. I didn't know.
You did
Seen
know
Discord?
that, actually, because we talk about anime all the time.
Yeah, we did. I actually didn't care for Cowboy Bebop, but it was an animation style thing. It just didn't really grab me. Trigun I
can
watched
see
a little
that.
bit.
I get it. There's some type of anime like that I just like I'll look at images from it and I just won't watch it no matter how many people tell me it's good because I'm like
Right.
I can't look at it.
Right.
Oh god, speaking of, so like have you seen there's a new Trigun that's out that's apparently very good.
I haven't
But
watched it
the
yet. but yeah, I
animation
saw
style
that.
is like the animation style is like semi 3D.
Mhm.
It's weird.
Oh, is that like CGI anime stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
more
like,
often
turned
than
me
not
off.
annoys me because it's so like out of place and weird in the rest of the anime. It's like,
Ye-
stop it.
Yeah. I can say like I don't know if I've ever watched any, so I don't know that I don't like it, but I can definitely understand that it's going to be like a taste that you either have or you do not, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Outland is one of those movies that's so fucking ridiculous, it's almost charming.
Mhm.
Because Sean Connery being like a space sheriff is stupid. He doesn't have to hit any women in this one, so I guess that's better for him.
Is it though? I feel like he probably enjoyed it.
No, I know he would have enjoyed it. Sorry, I meant better as in like for us.
Sure.
But like Outland is one of those movies that like would be on the list of things I would make you two watch with me for like a Patreon kind of dealio.
Oh man.
So, all right. Well, that is the end of my deep dive. We will be right back with a potpourri.
Welcome back, everybody. All right. So, for our last segment of the show, I want to do a little game review. As I mentioned previously, I had been playing Star Trek Resurgence, and I actually just completed it a couple days ago. For those of you who don't know, it is a interactive story game in the vein of previous Telltale games like Walking Dead or the Borderlands series. They also had a fantasy series of them that I can't remember at the moment, but
Did you say Borderlands?
yes, Tales from the Borderlands. There was
Oh, it is a separate Borderlands. I was like, Borderlands
Correct.
wasn't like, I mean, I guess shooting people in first person is interactive.
have either of you played any of those games?
I have not.
Yeah, I played the zombie one. Why can't I
Walking
think
Dead,
of the
yeah.
series name? Walking Dead, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I also played the Jurassic Park one. That one was fun.
Oh, I actually didn't see the Jurassic Park one. Interesting. So
I
yeah,
assume it's a lot like The Quarry. Like that's an interactive fiction game that's on the PlayStation.
I have not played that either, so I can't comment. However, it's made by the developer Dramatic Labs, which is apparently made up of people from Telltale Games, which is now defunct. They're not existent anymore. So they make a very similar game. You have it's a story-driven game. You make conversation choices that affect things around you, how the other characters are reacting to the character you're playing. In this one, you are playing from the perspective of two different people. Jara Rydek, who is the new first officer of the USS Resolute, as well as Carter Diaz, who is a crewman on the Resolute as well. This is you're kind of taking place in the first mission after a difficult event for the crew of the Resolute. A number of people died. Jara Rydek is replacing the recently departed first officer, and the ship's kind of trying to recover from that and kind of get a win on this new mission. It's a science vessel, and they're tasked with assisting with diplomacy of a conflict between two alien groups. But things are not as they initially appear. It doesn't stay as a simple diplomatic mission.
I feel like it'd
So
be a pretty lame game if it did.
You're right. As this is a story-centric game, I won't go too much into details. However, just kind of touching a couple parts of it, graphics-wise, if you are familiar with the Telltale games, the art style is not kind of in that cel-shaded art style that a lot of them were. I didn't play the Jurassic Park one. Was that way too?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a more, kind of realistic art style. It looks good. However, one of the annoying parts was there are basically no graphics options for it. And apparently frames are locked at 30 FPS. It's a story-centric game, so most of the time doesn't matter. But there are a certain number of action sequences that it is noticeable when that happens.
Can I tell you a family secret?
Yes.
I don't know that I can tell the difference.
So most of the time, like I said, most of the time for most things, most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Because like 27 FPS is standard TV, right?
I don't know. However, when
24.
there is a lot going on, a lot of particle effects, things like that, that's when a lot of times your eye can pick up on the differences.
Interesting.
Game mechanics wise, there's kind of a couple main parts to it. One is the conversation. So basically, in the conversation sequences, you're talking to the various crew, aliens, trying to work through the story. This is kind of how the plot advances. You're given basically 2 to 3 options of what to say. One thing that I think that it did really well with this is in the moment for most of the dialogue options, I think the game does a very good job of making it feel like there is no right or wrong answer. And they make it feel like your choices are important. There's, as an example, there's one where you're trying to, ingratiate yourself to the captain, but also the thing he's asking you and how you're going to react to these scenarios is like, man, I don't know if that sounds good to me. So that is one of the things that kind of Telltale Games does is give you dialogue options that aren't just, oh, well, yeah, that's the right answer. The other part of the game is kind of more, quick timey events, which I think the game also does pretty well with. They are very varied as far as what they are. There's, kind of your standard, oh, this action sequence is happening, press A to dodge, or, right stick to move this way. But you're also doing things like, making repairs to a shuttle, or, there's phaser fights, there's stealth sequences, which are more kind of play more arcadey. You're also taking tricorder readings of certain things to find, the correct way to go or the thing that's causing the problem. There is a couple things that I think they did well. Like I mentioned before, it does a good job of making your choices feel important. The interactive sequences are mostly fun and work pretty well. The story was good, and I think definitely captures the spirit of Star Trek. You feel like you're in a Star Trek episode, or maybe a Star Trek movie, since it's longer. I think, what was my playtime on this? My playtime was 10, 12 hours, so good amount of play from it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the characters, I think, were mostly well developed and believable with a sufficient amount of depth. There was a couple things that I'd like to point out that I didn't enjoy as much about it after the fact, and this is kind of, I think, an inherent problem with this type of game. But a lot of times the choices you make while in the moment feel important, maybe after the fact don't feel super impactful. As an example, in one scene, there's a sequence where you're supposed to be choosing, which side of this conflict that I mentioned earlier, which side you're going to support. Where at the time, it's like, oh man, this feels important. I don't know the right one to pick. Afterwards, it doesn't really feel like anything actually comes of that, outside of like a couple dialogue references later on. But as I said, I think that's partially just kind of an inherent problem with that type of game, because it has to move the story forward in a certain way so you can get to the end.
Yeah.
And then mechanics wise, I mentioned there's like these tricorder sequences where you're supposed to like scan things, and they just weren't super intuitive and often just came off as awkward and just a thing to get through as opposed to something fun I was doing. So with the tradition of the podcast, I'd like to rate this kind of on a 1 to 5, where 0 is threshold, I guess.
No. You gotta say 0 is the worst of whatever the Star Trek games are.
Oh man. Okay.
What's
0.
the Stellaris one?
No. 0 is 0 is the mobile lower decks game, apparently.
The mobile lower decks game.
Yes.
So I'd rate this a 4. It was very enjoyable. I got a good amount of playtime out of it. I felt like I was playing a Star Trek, game. I was definitely getting a Star Trek experience. So I would definitely recommend if you're a Star Trek fan, and I would think if you're listening to this podcast, you are. It'd be worth picking up. It is. I just started playing it because it just now on the Steam. It came out about a year ago on other platforms, but it just came out on Steam just a little bit ago. So
Yeah, so, and those, like, quick-timey events, those are the ones that, like, keep me away from games like this, because, like, I was telling you, I played, and I kind of glanced at the store page here, so I think it is very similar. I played a game called The Quarry, with, which has, like, it's got, like, 8 main characters, which worked out for my D&D group, because we needed a couple weeks off or whatever, and there are 8 of us. So, like, everyone took a character, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, this is
And,
like that
like,
horror one. Yeah, I know what this is.
Yeah, and it's a fun game. When you're doing like the talking or like choosing which direction to go or whatever. But as soon as it came to like, all right, you have 3 seconds to aim this gun and fire, like I was, and it's not like I'm not good at it because of my hands, you know. Like I don't
Just say I rocked that shit.
I don't do well in that scenario because my hands don't work.
Sure,
So-
In that
understandable.
game. I
Yeah.
rocked that shit in that game.
I think that is one thing. It's not all like quick time. There are like kind of more arcadey sections. Like there's a number of sections where you're like taking cover and having like a phaser fight,
Sure.
or you're like I said, there's certain parts where you're trying to like sneak by guards that are pathing around. So I think that is one of the parts that I enjoy, because I have played a number of these types of games before, and all of the quick time events a lot of times are just like pretty straightforward. Hit the button, or like maybe
Right.
mash this button or something like that. So I did enjoy the variety of kind of more interactive sections that this had.
Now, my other question then, related to the QuickTime Adventures, because the one thing that Corey did actually well is that if you fail a QuickTime thing, the story moves on, and like there are story consequences to failing those events. It never is like the end of the game. Does this do that too, or does it just make you keep doing it until you get it right?
So I never failed a quick time event.
All right. Ooh, fancy pants, Rich McGee over here.
Oh, that's not true. Actually, there was one I did fail near the end of the game, and it did continue. Now, it was a very hard one, like harder than any of the other ones, so I don't know if there was an actual way to complete it correctly, but it did continue after I'd failed the QuickTime part, so.
Okay. Because, like, I would be very annoyed with a game like that if, like, I had to just keep repeating something, that I just had to keep banging my head against something before it would let me move on. Because that's not, to me, that's not an interactive fiction at that point. That's just like here's a a Candy Crush level you need to figure out before you're allowed to see the rest of the story.
I think it's probably a mix. I think there's probably some where like, oh, if you fail to hit the thing, you die and you have to replay it. But also, I think there's also, just from my recollection of, I think there's some, like, if you didn't do it correctly, it would like continue maybe with more negative impact or whatever.
And I think that Star Trek, as an IP and as a universe, could do very well in that medium.
Yeah, I agree. I think it does suit Star Trek very well.
Yes, and I think that, like, in a lot of ways, it suits it better than a lot of other kinds of games that try to be Star Trek. Because Star Trek has very much always been an ensemble kind of deal, and it's difficult to make a single player experience feel like an ensemble without it being kind of contrived.
Right.
But like doing it this way seems like a good way to tell that kind of story. Yeah,
I agree. Like I said, I think it does fit very well for that type. Like Star Trek fits very well in this type of genre of game, and Star Trek, when it is good, is very story driven, and obviously that is kind of the focus of these games. So
it kind of reminds me of those games that like your brother used to play. Like when I would go over and visit, I'd see Eric playing like some point and click Star Trek adventure game on his computer. Yeah.
Those are kind of are along the same lines, but also kind of their own deal. Because I feel like a lot of times get like very like almost puzzly. Like you got to find the thing or click the things in the right order.
Yeah, you gotta feed the dog the sandwich so it doesn't eat your galactic fleet later.
Yeah, and there were like a couple light puzzly things here. Like there's one point where you're supposed to like guide the transporter pattern through this effect that's dispersing things or interfering, and you gotta move things on the little panel to make it work right. So there are aspects of that as well, but yeah, definitely more just actiony and story focused.
Interesting. Yeah, because like, and whenever there's like a Star Trek 4X, like the Stellaris game, or even like Birth of the Federation, which I enjoyed before, or also with like the RTSs and stuff, it's like they're fun, but it's very much like this is just a Star Trek skin to an RTS game.
Yeah.
It doesn't really feel like Star Trek.
Yeah,
it just feels like I get to see the Star Trek ships, which is great. I love it.
Like in Star Trek, nobody was ever just amassing, Galaxy class ships or anything like that.
Right. And when they were, those were the least exciting episodes. Like those were boring.
Well, that wraps up my review. Anybody got any final thoughts for the episode?
No. I think this is a long one.
Yes.
You guys should really try Starfleet Academy. I think you'd like it. And Stanford Starfleet Academy 2 lets you pilot Klingon stuff.
I saw Starfleet Academy. It looks like something I would fucking hate, so I disagree.
All right. Well, as Stanford mentioned at the top of the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, check out our YouTube channel. We're posting the podcast there as well as some more fun shorts. So check it out, and we will catch you next time.
We love you all.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.